I became acquainted with Hanford when my cousin Gordon Sparks worked there in, I believe it was 1949. He worked for Atkins and Jones, the construction people, and then he went to the service, and when he came back, he never rehired back down there. But my husband got out of the service in August of '51, and he went down the next week and applied. Little did we know. So he started work there in, I believe it was the middle of September or toward the end of September of 1951. And then in November of 1951, I had my first miscarriage. And then I had a live birth after that, and then another miscarriage. And then we moved down there in, I believe it was January of '56. And I immediately that summer had another miscarriage. And he began to, after several months there, began to complain about his back. He was always standing up and pushing on his back. His back hurt really bad. So in the same summer, his parents came from Massachusetts to visit. And his mother was really concerned because we had gone through several of the orthopedic guys here in Yakima. My family lived here, and when he was off the summer of '56 from work, we would come back to Yakima because we knew the orthopedics people here. And they could find nothing wrong with him, but he still complained, and he wasn't a complainer. So his mother talked him into coming back to the East Coast, which we went in September of '56. And then our daughter was born back there in July of '57, and another son in December of '58. And those two babies apparently were fine. I had another son there in October of 1960, and then we came back here because my father had just passed away and my mother was alone. So we came back here, and he never went back to Hanford to work, but we were still kind of communicating with the people that he rode in a carpool from Yakima to Hanford every day for 5 years, well, 4.5 years. And all of the people who rode in that carpool are now gone, with the exception, I think, probably of one fellow, Clark Enslow, who lives here in town. I assume he's still alive. I haven't heard otherwise. But of the 6 people that were in the carpool, he is the only one left. And you hear these things, and you hear little snips in the paper about, well, this happened and that happened. And one of the fellows that rode in the carpool, Glenn Miller, was one of 2 people that was involved in what they called a nuclear accident a few years ago. And he and the other fellow were highly contaminated and were scrubbed down and put in isolation and the whole bit that they do for that. And Glenn is now gone. And the other fellow, I can't remember. I remember reading an article about him in the paper last summer, but I can't remember if he has passed away now or if he's still alive. I was thinking the other lady might know his name because it was in all the papers. But a couple of my kids have minor deformities. The second son and the last son that was born here have minor, what we used to term as club feet. Nothing that so bad that it needed surgery, but it's there. And I got in with the Downwinders in, I believe it was in 90 or 91, because one of my patients at the hospital had been born on the reservation down there. His name was Lynn Durand, and he was born spina bifida, which is the spine is exposed. And he had very bad feelings about the whole area down there and the people and the way he was treated. It's just an act of nature and all of this stuff. But it was a bad thing. And then my daughter, when she married, moved to the Tri-Cities. Her husband was from Prosser, moved to the Tri-Cities, and she began to work at Hanford, and she began to have bleeding problems, vaginal bleeding, and they took her in to do cryosurgery on what they termed as tumors. And when the doctor had finished with that, he was doing a little further exam, and he said, "I have found a spot of cancer." And she was early 20s. Her daughter, who is now, will be 19 in September, suffers from terrific allergies and had some sort of an abdominal surgery. I don't recall the name they gave it, but it was something unusual for a girl 16, 17 years old to have. Very unusual. In fact, they took her to Seattle. The doctor here didn't want to handle it. He sent her to Seattle to have it done. But other than that, knock on wood, my other children are okay. My cousin, who started work there on construction, is in bad shape. His heart is very enlarged, and he has such a bad heart condition that they had to implant a defibrillator. And he's had stomach problems for years, ever since I can remember. It's drink the Mylanta out of the bottle, and even the medications now that that the doctor prescribes for him, it will work for a week or two, and then it doesn't work anymore, so it's something else. And he has really failed in the last 2 months. But we just, it's an odd situation, because the people who work there, if they communicated, it was with other people who worked there. It was no one outside. My husband worked there 5 years, and the only thing I knew about his job was that his permanent area was 200 West, and he worked out of that area. And I know when I woke up one morning when we were living down there, I found this little gray wooden box on the porch, and I was going to toss it in the garbage, and he said, "Don't touch it, that's for my urine specimen." And I said, "Why do you need one?" And he said, "When we get into a area that is highly contaminated, we have to have urine specimens." So thereafter, when I saw it, I just ignored it. But I know of one other family that lived kitty-cornered across the street from us. They had a child that was stillborn just a month or two after we moved there, and I heard that it was I didn't see the baby, but I heard that it was very badly deformed.